Om Sthapakaya cha dharmasya sarvadharmaswarupine avatara varisthaya Ramakrishnaya te namaha. We are continuing our discussion on the philosophy of Ramanuja. Now, there are some very important ways of correctly understanding Ramanuja's position about his concept of God, his concept of the world and its status, his ontological status, and also different living beings. So it's called Tattvatraya. I already explained this earlier. Normally, when we discuss the Vedantic philosophical ideas of great teachers like Shankaracharya, Ramanuja, Madhva, Nimbarka, Vallabha, Chaitanya, and others, we focus on these three important principles. The idea of the supreme reality, that is God, and then the concept of its relationship with other living beings, and also its relationship with the phenomenal world, and the connection or status of relationship between different objects in the empirical phenomenal world, and also the relationship between different living beings in this creation. So, but altogether, the whole metaphysics and philosophy is analyzed for focusing on these three important principles, that Ishvara, Jiva, and Jagat, called Tattvatraya. Now, there are some places in the Vedanta Sangraha, and also the more important book of the same category, Sri Bhashya, where Ramanuja analyzes certain statements in the Upanishads, which are obviously Advaitic in their orientation. So, we have to keep in mind there are many statements in the Upanishads which are apparently, if you take literally, they have an Advaitic orientation, Advaitic sense, so to speak. And there are some statements which are obviously of a Vishishtadvaita, more with the greater relevance, apparently, literally speaking, in the direction of Ramanuja's system. So how Ramanuja deals with some of these ideas? I already mentioned earlier when I was discussing Advaita, that Shankaracharya has got this unique way of looking at reality from different perspectives, from three different perspectives, so to speak. One, the absolute reality, which is unborn and which is imperishable. It has no beginning, no end, anadi anantam. So it remains the same in the past, present, and future without any modification. And it's also beyond the six changes. This again we have to keep in mind. These are some of the vital points in Indian philosophy, in Vedantic systems. Six changes. Originally, the statement goes back all the way to Yaska's Nirukta. Yaska wrote the first well-known etymological work focusing on the meaning and definitions of Vedic sounds, Vedic words occurring in the Rig Veda, mostly in the Rig Veda, focusing on the Samhita mantras, where he takes up a number of, not only relatively very small number, if we keep in mind the size of Rig Veda Samhita, he takes up just a few hundreds of very important Vedic sounds, and he analyzes the meaning of those Vedic shabdas. For example, Indra Kasmat, Vaishwanara Kasmat, Deva Kasmat. Why the word Vaishwanara is called Vaishwanara? Why Indra is called Indra? Why Deva is called Deva? The Deva Kasmat, Devo Danadva, Dyotanadva, Dusthanova, Bhavati. Like that he goes on analyzing. Because these devas live in the celestial regions, this Thanova. They listen to your prayers and they fulfill your demands that you express in your prayers. It's called Dhanadvya, Dhanadva. So, like that, there are different ways of analyzing Vedic Shabdas in the Niruktam, which is the first available etymological work, maybe the first etymological work available. Of course, before him there was a Vaidya Nikhandu, which he perhaps has taken as a role model while writing this Niruktam, which goes back to between 6th and 9th century BC. We are not very sure. Between 6th or 9th century BC before Christ. Now, coming back to the subject. In that book, he mentions Shadvikaras, 6 changes that everything in this phenomenal world is subjected to. That is, being born. Birth is a change from a state of empirical non-existence to a state of empirical existence. So birth, existence, growth, evolution, and decay and disappearance. Jayade, asti, varthade, viparinamade, apakshede, vinashyati. 6 changes. Shankaracharya says, the absolute reality, Brahman, Paramarthika Satta, is beyond all these changes. Which means he cannot even be called as something existing in the empirical sense, because it always existed. Because existence implies in the empirical world, if you talking about child is born, the child has come into existence. A tree has come into existence. When you sow a seed, the seed sprouts and the tree comes into existence. So Brahman doesn't come into existence like that, because it always exists. And it is imperishable. It can never cease to exist. So it's also beyond the intermediary stages of changes, like existence, growth and evolution and decay. No, nothing happens. So this is Shankaracharya's concept of the absolute reality. And he says, he makes a statement, Sarvam Khalu Idam Brahma, that is in Chandogya Upanishad, the 3rd chapter of Chandogya Upanishad, 14th section, Khanda, first mantra, that is Sarvam Khalu Idam Brahma. And again, Shankaracharya makes a statement. I'm coming to Ramanuja, how Ramanuja deals with the same topic, which is dealt with in one way, in one fashion by Shankara, and how Ramanuja looks at the same statement. Then you get a clear idea of the uniqueness of Ramanuja system in relation to Advaita and the uniqueness of Advaita in relation to Ramanuja system. So that's the purpose. So this mantra actually comes in the Kathopanishad. Those who can later look at the book, there are different ways of classifying the Kathopanishad Valli. The 4th Valli, 11th mantra. Manasai Vedamatvavyam neha nanasti kinjana murtyoko samurtyam gacchadi yaiha naneva pashyati. This is a mantra. So Ramanuja focuses on the mantra neha nanasti kinchana. What does it mean? There is no plurality in this world or in existence. This is a clearly, obviously Advaitic statement. Absolutely no doubts. Sarvam Khalu Idam Brahma. In the Bhashya of Shankaracharya, this will be quoted again. It is from Chandogya. Chandogya is from Samaveda and Kathopanishad is from Krishna Yajurveda. So, Ramanuja's statement focusing on the small little statement called Mantra Bhaga from the Kathopanishad, that is Neha Nanasti Kinchana. That is, there is no Nana Na Asti. There is no plurality. That's the idea behind. There is absolutely no plurality. So Ramanuja is doing a little bit of circus to give a description and explanation of this statement. Because obviously Advaitic, remember a little bit of this polemics you find in Shankaracharya's commentaries also. But one important point is, Shankaracharya makes it a point that Advaita is essentially a matter of experience. And that experience is beyond explanation. So, verbally you cannot really experience Advaita, because even to experience there should be an experiencer, a knower, something that is experienced, that is known, and the process of knowing or the process of experiencing. It's called Tripudi, like knower, the known object, and the process of knowing. Tripudi. So, in this highest experience, all these merge into one. Or that distinction doesn't exist. The known and knower become one. Now, this is again a matter of experience. Brahmavid, Brahmaiva bhavati. Brahmavid means the knower of Brahman, Brahma eva bhavati. The knower of Brahman becomes Brahman itself, because he realizes, he experiences. He doesn't know, he's not knowing the way we use the word knowledge in the empirical world, but he experiences his own unity with in the totality of existence. This experience is what Shankaracharya is talking about. And this is the Paramarthika Satta experience. But remember, this gradation of Paramarthika, Vyavaharika, Pradibhasika and Asat, they are absolutely irrelevant so far as Ramanuja is concerned. Shankaracharya says, wherever there are statements which talk about plurality, they only imply things of this world, things of the Mithya Jagat, things of the empirical realm. And if you transcend that level, then you become, then you experience the reality of oneness. That is Advaitic experience. So it's called Vyavaharika Satta, the empirical, the common sense reality. The other is ultimate Paramarthika Satta, that is Vyavaharika Satta, empirical, common sense, everyday experience. But below that there is Pradibhasika, that is the idea. For example, you see a piece of rope in a dim light room, there is not enough light, and you mistake the rope for a snake. The snake is not in that room. The snake is only in your mind. And the snake idea is the result of adhyasa, an experience, a memory coming from some other experience, because you have seen a snake sometime in the past, maybe in the forest or in the zoo or somewhere else. That memory is smriti rupa. That is the definition of adhyasa, superimposition. And because of that memory, you put that memory into the object that you saw in the dimly light room, and you mistook that room for a snake. The snake is totally unreal. Why? Because snake is something that exists in this world, not in that room, but only in a memory, or maybe in a forest, but not on that particular object. It is only a piece of rope. So snake is Pradibhasika Satta. That's the idea behind. It's a kind of ideational reality. It's only a concept. It is not totally unreal. What is totally unreal, as I explained in my previous class, is something that cannot be even intellectually conceived of. If a person talks about this, you think he's crazy, maybe 2 psychiatrists can help him to give a certification, he go to lunatic asylum. Suppose he says there is a city in the sky, say Gandharva Nagara, or the horns of a hare, Sesavishana. Hares cannot have horns. If there are horns, it cannot be hair. So even the very statement contradicts its possible existence. It's called asat. Now when you come to Ramanuja, the problem is Ramanuja, Madhva, Nimbarka, Chaitanya, Baladeva, every one of them have the unique distinction of having totally mistaken the idea of Vyavaharika or empirical reality for nonsensical reality. That means nonsensical means something that cannot even exist as an idea. Gandharva Nagara, a city in the sky, cannot even exist. The statement itself is absolutely, illogical. It contradicts its own possible existence. So self-contradictory. Now, if you come to the Ramanuja system and all the polemics of whether Sudarsana Suri, who wrote a commentary on the Brahma Sutras, or Vedanta Desika, who wrote on Bhagavad Gita, and all the subsequent polemical dialectical works, not as extensive as in Madhva system, but a respectable, a moderate number of highly sophisticated polemical dialectical works were written by post-Ramanujite Vishishtadvaitins. So, in all of them you find they clearly fail to understand the Advaitic distinction, the Advaitic way of drawing a line between the Paramarthika, Vyavaharika, Pratibhasika and Asat. The absolute reality, the empirical common sense reality, the ideational reality. This may not perhaps be a very accurate translation of Pratibhasika Satta, but for want of a better term, I have to use this. And then something which is totally self-contradictory, that is Asat. Totally non-existent, which is beyond the possibility of any kind of existence. Even as an idea, it cannot exist. Like if the horns of a hare sit in the sky, etc. Now, I will coming to the subject now. How does Shankara interpret this? He says, pra ekatva vijnanat acharya agama samskritena manasa eva idam brahmaikarasam aptavyam atmaiva na anyadasti iti. This is what Shankaracharya says. Before you experience this Advaitic reality, before you actually reach this level of Advaitic experience, you have to refine, culture your mind with proper instruction from a teacher and also from a proper study of Vedantic literature. When Shankaracharya uses the word agama, he actually means Shruti or Upanishads. But Ramanuja talks about, let's say, verbal testimony, Shabda Pramana. He not only implies Upanishads, but he also gives importance to Vishnu Purana. He also gives importance to the locally available spiritual canonical literature, like the Nalayana Prabandhas, which is an extensive literature written in original ancient Tamil language, which is the second oldest language in India after Sanskrit, maybe in the world. So, Nalayana Prabandhas. And also they were followed by great thinkers, great devotees. Rather, they were, instead of devotees, better call them, they are not necessarily great thinkers, they are great devotees. They followed a very sublime tradition of devotional heritage. They were called Alvars. So their teachings got included in the Nalayana Prabandha. They were followed by Natya Muni and Ramanuja's predecessor, who was also a great devotee. His name was Yamunacharya, and also a few others. So, according to Shankara, Agama means Upanishads. And other canonical literature, it does not contradict the Upanishads teachings. But according to Ramanuja, it's called Ubhaya Vedantin. It means not only Vedas, but also some of the spiritual literature available in his own province, which were almost unknown, especially in northern parts of India, north of India, till maybe just a few hundreds of years ago. So this is an important thing. So a mind should be properly refined and cultured, must be prepared and ready before you get this experience. So Prag Ekatva Vijnanat, before you get this experience, you should approach a teacher and get proper instruction. Acharya Agama Samskridena Manasa Eva Idam Brahmaigarasam Atmavyam. This Brahmajnanam, this knowledge of Brahman should be attained or obtained by spiritual seekers after getting sadhana sadhushta sampatti. The preliminary disciplines that I already mentioned so many times in the previous sessions. They should study the scriptures. They should also get instruction from teachers. And then they will realize Atma eva. Na anyat asti iti. The absolute reality, the supreme reality, the imperishable reality, the Paramatmik Satta is Atma. Atma alone. Nothing else. There is no plurality. This is the experience. Aptecha. And after getting this experience, Nanatu Pratyupasthapikayaha Avidyayaha Nivrittatvad. And once you attain this spiritual experience, then what happens is the cause of the false perception, that is the perception of plurality, it completely disappears. It completely disappears. So, going back to the previous analogy, in the dimly lit room, where there's not enough light for you to see things properly, you're actually looking at a piece of rope, but because there is not enough light, you mistook that rope for a snake. But when you bring a flashlight, or when you open the windows, when you switch on the electric light, then what happens? That snake disappears. What actually is disappearing is the false notion that it is a snake, or the snake idea disappears. Like that, when you realize this Brahmajnanam, then this Nanatvam, the plurality, the wrong notion that there is more than one reality, the reality disappears. It doesn't just disappear the way a man disappears when he is running. No. When you realize that it is a rope, you are realizing that what you previously mistook for a rope is now understood to be a snake. What you previously mistook to be a rope is now realized the snake. So, the same object was mistaken to be a rope, and the same object is now realized for what it is, that is, it is a rope. The same rope which you mistook for a snake, that snake is now properly understood to be what actually it is, that is, it is a piece of rope. Similarly, the plurality doesn't disappear, but in its place, its true reality is perceived that it is Brahman. It's a little bit of a dialectical point, which actually Ramanuja raised, and we can discuss this maybe today itself after some time. Ramanuja himself raised 7 objections, Sapta Anupapatti, means 7 untenables. 7 objections against Advaitis, which actually comes as a Maha Purvapaksha at the beginning of Sri Bhashya. It's a very interesting study. That is, Sapta Anubhavati Vada, 7 untenable. So it is those of you, because this is a recorded thing, you can listen to it again. One is Anirvachaniya Anubhavati, Asraya Anubhavati, Tirodhana Anubhavati, Pramana Anubhavati, Nivartaka Anubhavati, Nivritya Anubhavati. And of course there is one Asraya Anubhavati before that. These are the Anubhavati means untenable. Logically, it doesn't stand. Scrutiny, that's the meaning of it. Now, all these 7 objections are focused on one thing, avidya. And Ramanuja wants to know why avidya is able to obscure the vision of Brahman. Just one example. Just very interesting. Those who are intellectually good intellectual past came. Vedantins will tell you that because of avidya, you are not able to perceive the reality of Brahman. You are under the wrong notion that you are the jiva. So it's because of adhyasa. So adhyasa, mithya, maya, avidya, these are all interlinked. So Ramanuja is asking a question. If a Brahman is all-pervading, omniscient, absolutely real, always existing, then how can avidya obscure its presence? So Advaitins will answer. Suppose there is a let's say a black patch of cloud, a patch of black cloud, dark cloud, which obscures the vision of sun. Sunlight may be obscured by dark clouds. You cannot say that the clouds make sun disappear or the clouds affect sun. The cloud in any way is limiting the manifestation of sun. The clouds only obscures our vision of sunlight or sun, that's all. And clouds disappear, the sun is there. Even when the clouds obscure the vision, still the sun is there. Sun is always there. But because of avidya, it may obscure our vision, our seeing the sun or sunlight. So he actually puts forward 3 untenable objections to the very idea that because of avidya, and that's because of that we identify ourselves with our body, that is Shariratma Buddhi. We think we are the body, mind complex and nothing else because of avidya, because of nations, because of ignorance. So we have to get rid of all this. For that we should need sadhana chatushtaya sambatti. Then we should approach a teacher, we should study the shastras, we should meditate, we should practice spiritual disciplines, karma yoga, etc. When our mind becomes pure, then jnana prapti, jnana will come, moksha will come. This is Shankaracharya's method. Now the point is, because of these dark clouds, the sun doesn't disappear. We are not able to see the sun. That's all. It is our problem. It doesn't affect the sun. So Ramanuja's question is almost ridiculous because he is asking, if Brahman is all-pervading and everywhere, then how could avidya obscure your vision of Brahman? So Tirodhana Anubhavati, Nivartaka Anubhavati, Nivartya Anubhavati. 3 objections are raised it's not one after another, but it's not not a well organized, but not 1, 2, 3 like that. But you can, from the Ramanuja's Sri Bhashya, of course you have to study under a teacher, otherwise one can, with every chance that people may have totally wrong notions about Ramanuja. Ramanuja was a great devotee and great humanist. So always be kept in mind. But he could not really, maybe he was not ready to fully accept this. The real meaning of avidya as given by Advaitins. So coming back to Shankara's commentary, then we will read Ramanuja's commentary. Vedartha Sangraha and then of course Sri Bhashya. Vedartha Sangraha is a small book which also follows the same philosophical thread that's found in the Sri Bhashya, which is much more important and much larger work. So here, for example, Bhashyakara says, Aptecha, when you get this spiritual experience, then Nana pratyupasthapikayaha avidyayaha nivartatvad. Then avidya goes away. And what is avidya? Avidya is actually the responsible for the wrong notion that plurality is real. That wrong notion goes away. Iha brahmani nana nasti kinchana anumatramabi. So in Brahman there is nothing other than Brahman alone. Brahman is the only reality. There is no plurality, not even a bit of plurality. That's a literal translation of the Bhashya, the commentary. Yastu punaha avidya timiradrishtim na munchadi iha brahmani naneva pashyati saha murtyoha murtyam gacchati eva swalpamavi bhedam adhyaropayan ityartha. Now, what happens to those who are not able to transcend this experience of plurality? And Bhashyakara says, Shankaracharya says, Yastu punaha, even after getting this experience, if any person, of course, after getting this experience, this plurality will not be experienced at all. But if anybody has got this wrong notion, Timiradrishti means actually eyes affected by jaundice. That is a highly graphic and literary way of explaining this. Namunchadi iha brahmani naneva pashyadi saha murtyoha murtyam gacchadi eva swalpamavi bhedam adhyaropayan ityartha. If they still seem plurality, then they'll keep rotating through these endless cycles of life and death and rebirth. This goes on. But remember, this is an important thing. According to Advaitins, being born in this world, you may be born as a billionaire, having everything. Unless you are a Buddha, you won't feel like going away from a palace where everything is wonderful. So, remember, we have to take it for granted. This is meant for somebody who is highly evolved soul. So, Buddha is a classical example. Buddha was born as a prince, and his father made all precautions to prevent him from running away. Still he forced himself out at night because this luxury, this palace, all the reputation, all the youth, all the wealth, terrible. So he wanted something else other than these wonderful things. So that is the sort of person who is good, looking for escaping this cycle of birth, life and death and rebirth, this cycle. Now coming, how Ramanuja deals with this subject. So that is the subject, that is an interesting. So you have to remember. Before that we should keep in mind Ramanuja considers God as the ultimate totality of all that is auspicious. So he will tell you that Neha nanasti kinchana means there is no plurality in God. It doesn't deny the possibility of plurality per se. What it implies is there is no inauspicious things in Brahman. So in other words, there is nothing inauspicious, something that is that will somehow defile, or something outside of Brahman. Nothing exists. So that is, so na iha nana asti means iha nana na asti. In this, in our experience, there is no plurality at all. That's the meaning of the Upanishad statement, manasai vedam apavyam neha nana asti kinchana. In the Kathopanishad, Sri Ramanuja says, it is not a total denial of plurality. Ramanuja's system believes in plurality. You have to keep in mind. Ramanuja believes in what is technically called Parinamavada, means God himself evolves into different things in this world and different jivas, different living souls. So Ramanuja believes in Parinamavada. God becomes one. Shankaracharya believes in Vivartavada. The difference is, when this transformation is seen to be only apparent, not real, it is called Vivarta. When it is real, it is called Parinama. For example, oil seeds undergo transformation. Parinama means transformation, and become oil. Oil cannot go back to oil seed. So oil and oil seed are two distinct entities. Their ontological status is, at the phenomenal world, is the same. That's an important thing. Oil and oil seed, they have the same status. Why? Because the effect cannot go back to the cause. Oil cannot go back to oil seed. Now come to Shankaracharya system. Shankaracharya says it is Vivarta, means the transformation is only apparent. You have a pot made of clay. You break it, it becomes clay. The clay can certainly go back to the pot form at the hands of a good pot maker. And again it can come back to pot, and again you break it, it can go back to clay. So the transformation of clay into pot is not an ultimate transformation like the transformation of oil seed into oil. That's an important thing. Mustard can become mustard oil, but from mustard oil again it cannot become mustard. That is Parinama, that is Ramanuja means. Jivas can never be one with Ishvara. Different souls and different objects in the phenomenal world can never become one with God. There is always, and there will always be a kind of unity and oneness. Unity in the sense, similarity in the sense, God is present in all living beings as Antaryami, as an indweller. But different jivas, different souls are not identical with God. So it is Surupa Aikyam. It is called Surupa Aikyam. Essentially, there is thing that is in Shankara. In Shankara, it is Surupa Aikyam. Jivo Brahmaiva Naparaha, that is Shankara. But in Ramanuja, it is Vishishtaikyam. The Aikyam is Vishishta, modified or qualified by the distinction. So this is an important thing. Surupa means inherently, essentially, fundamentally. Jiva, Jivo Brahmaiva Napara. Jiva is nothing other than Brahman itself in reality. That is Tattwamasi. We already discussed this very elaborately in Advaitic, the previous classes. At the beginning, Shvetaketu did not understand. Later, Shvetaketu understood Tattwamasi Upadesha, the Chandogya. Because when we look upon ourselves as being devoid of body, mind, complex, emotions and feelings and everything, then our true essence is the Brahman. And that Brahman is the same as the all-pervading reality. When that Brahman manifests through this body, mind, complex and antakaranas, living different individual jivas are existing. So there is Sarupa Aikyam. Essentially, there is a unity and oneness. But Ramanuja, Aikyam is that, but this is Vishishta Aikyam. Means Chit Achit Vishishta Aikyam. Same Brahman, modified or qualified by Chit and Achit. Chit, jivas, and Achit, phenomenal world, empirical world. So Ramanuja says, Surupa Nirupana Dharma Shabdahi Dharma Mukhena Surupamapi Pradipadayanti Tathahi Sutrakaraka. Ramanuja is quoting a very, very famous sutra. That is when Brahma Sutra, those who have got the text, you can read second chapter of Brahma Sutra, third pada, 29th sutra. That is Tad Gunasarattvatu Tad Vyapateshah Prajnavad. This is the Raman, this is the quotation, this is Brahma Sutra, Ramanuja quotes. We'll explain if we have enough time today, we'll explain, otherwise we'll continue discussion next time. So the point, in other words, Yavad Atma Bhava Nityatvat. So Ramanuja says this Nanatvam, there is, it denied just to rule out the possibility of anything that is evil or negative in Brahman. Neha nanasti kinchana. So the nana or the plurality is given a meaning in the sense in Brahman there is only a totality of all that is auspicious and good. There is nothing evil. Now remember, from a metaphysical point of view, it is a limitation from the highest ontological perspective, because if you exclude certain things happening in the world which are not very desirable things, and you say it is outside of Brahman, at the same time you say this Brahman is the totality of all the greatness, power, knowledge, Sagala Guna Kalyana Nidhi, etc. Then if Stephen Hawking or Richard Dawkins or maybe the person who passed away, Christopher Hitchens, asked the question, what do you do if your God is so auspicious, so compassionate, then why did such a God why did God create this COVID-19 or all the terrible things? We see a God, if He is so compassionate, He could have made all provisions for everyone in this world. No problem, zero problem. God could have done it. So you feel an obligation to protect your God, saying He is all that is auspicious only. Everything is outside of Him. Then you have to invent or a devil, somebody to whom you have to put all the negative at his door. Because that's a problem with all anthropomorphic monotheistic systems. So that problem is there, that's all. It is perfectly okay for a devotee, but from a metaphysical perspective, it is less than satisfactory. That's the only statement we can make. We don't, because there is no point of criticizing. That's why when you exclude certain things and say that this is outside of God's realm, then you have to say he has a problem. He's compassionate, but he's not omniscient. He's not omnipotent. He's not omnipotent. If he's omnipotent, if he creates this terrible world, then he's all-powerful, but he's not that good. He could still be better. So that criticism will arise. That's an important point to keep in mind. Anyway, so now we will take up some other maybe more very interesting subjects. Now, let us say how Ramanuja actually explains this. That is Vishishtaikyam. In contrast to the Sarupaikyam of Advaitins, Ramanuja believes in a Vishishtaikyam. So he says, Ashesha Chit Achit Prakaram Brahmaikameva Tattvam. So, Ashesha Chit Achit Prakaram Brahmaikameva Tattvam Tatra Prakara Prakarinoho Prakaranam cha Mitha Atyanta Bhede api Vaishishtyadi Vivakshaya Egatva Vipateshaha Tadidara Nishedhascha. That is, the absoluteness of Vishishtadvaita is characterized by the attributes What are these attributes? Jiva, which is sentient, which is chit, which is sparks of knowledge. In fact, that means because it is the antaryami, the indweller, the spark of Brahman. It is sentient, chit, and achit, non-sentient. That's why ashesha chit achit prakaram brahmaikameva tattvam. It is one. That's why Vishishtadvaita. It is one. But it is Visishta. Tatra prakara prakarinoha prakaranam cha mitha atyanta bheti api vaishishtyadi vivakshaya ekatva vipateshaha tat idara nishethascha. So, at the beginning, Ramanuja mentioned this. That is, it is oneness. It is oneness modified or qualified by something, and that something is chit, sentient, and achit, which is insentient. And it is different, and he emphasizes that it is different from the undifferentiated Brahman of Advaita. That is a ekatva vipadesha idara nishedhascha. He is trying to refute the views of Advaitins who will tell you that it is not differentiated by anything. It is absolute Advaita without any distinction. That's why the Vedanta Deshika again he says Trayanameva chaivam upanyasa prasnaha avyaktam pradhanam vamise. Trayanameva upanyasa prasnaha. The one quotation is there. That is according to him, asmin prakarane yeyam prede vijigitsa manishte ityarabhya asamaptehe upasya upasana upasaganam trayanameva kyeyatvena upanyasam prasnascha drishyate. Again, it is a reference to one statement in the Kathopanishad where Nachiketa is asking the third boon. The yeyam prede vijigitsa manishte astityegena ayamasti dijaygi edad vidya manishishtas tvayaham varanamesha varastratiyeha. So, there is the unity and oneness of the object of worship and the act of worshipping or meditating, and also the one who is worshipping, the worshipper, the act of worshipping and the object of worship, or the one who meditates, the act of meditation and the object of meditation. So all the upasya, upasana, upasaganam trayanameva ekatvam jnayatvena upanyasa prasnascha drishyate. So that is the Nachiketa is asking the question, asking for the ultimate reality. So this is an important thing to remember. So tatascha vaishishtameva aikyam na sarva swarupa aikyam iti nirnayaka. That is a rejection, that is an outright rejection of Advaita system. It is not sarva swarupa aikyam. Swarupa aikyam is Advaitin's view. That is Brahma Satyam Jagat Mithya Jivo Brahmaiva Na Paraha. So Jivaha Brahma Eva Na Paraha. That is everything is the same. Jiva and Brahman are the same. Sarva Swarupa Aikyam. But in Ramanuja system, it is Visishta Aikyam. That is Brahman qualified or conditioned by the sentient jivas and insentient empirical objects. Now we can have interaction. Maybe some of these need to be cleared during interaction more elaborately. So that be better. You can ask questions on this subject. You're most welcome. Thank you.
Swami, I have a question about the snake and the rope example.
Yeah.
It said that in that example, the snake is only an idea of the mind, that only the rope exists. But can't it be said that the rope is also only an idea in the mind, in the sense of nama-rupa is only in the mind?
Yeah, I tell you. No, that's a difference. Advaita Vedantins make a distinction between pratibhasika, that is an idea in the mind, and also vyavaharika. Because when vyavaharika satta is realized, pratibhasika satta goes away. You see, suppose you have an idea in mind that this is a snake, okay. The snake is what we call, let's say, is an intellectual, you may call it is related to memory. It's a mental projection, so to speak. It's very difficult to give an exact translation of what is pratibhasika. So we can say mental ideation, a mental projection, all will be fun, more or less fine. Okay, now, that is rejected and that is cancelled when you realize the empirical. When you realize the empirical, the mental is cancelled. The mental and the visual, what you see in front of you, may not be seen. And when you realize that it is a rope, which is, after all, a vyavaka, it's an empirical thing. It is something you can go and touch. In empirical experience, your mind and senses of perception are actively involved in empirical, remember. It is gross. In mental projection, your mind is involved. Mental projections are more like sopna, that is dream. Dream objects are cancelled when you wake up. What you see when you wake up is vyavaharika, empirical things. It's an important thing. So there is a stage by stage cancellation. When you become a Brahmajnani and over a Brahman, then you transcend the vyavaharika, the empirical. Just like you transcend the mental when you experience the empirical. The empirical thing is something you can touch. Your body will be affected. If it's a cobra, suppose it's a cobra, it is bite you, it will be affected. But a mental cobra may bite you, nothing happens to you. Understand? So, the mental, that is pratibhasika, is cancelled when you experience vyavaharika. Vyavaharika is transcended when you experience paramarthika. I would say, it's not difficult to pronounce. After some years we can perhaps try to use this, that is paramarthika, vyavaharika, pratibhasika and asat. So asat is never experienced. It is not even mental, unless you want to be certified. I saw a city in the sky. The very fact that the city that you are talking about is in the sky, it denies its possibility. That's why each statement contains in it its own contradiction. It's an important thing. So, and then you realize, it's not possible, it is only cloud. So remember, so it's cancelled. Similarly, when you are mistaking the rope for a snake, the snake idea is totally gone when you open the door, when you open the windows, when you switch on the light. So what happened to the mental projection? It goes away, it's cancelled by the empirical. The empirical is cancelled when you read the transcendental. Sri Ramakrishna, when Sri Ramakrishna got instruction, Mahavakya, from Totapuri, he transcended the empirical. When Sri Ramakrishna touched Swamiji later, Swami Vivekananda first underwent this experience. He found everything was rotating. Everything became a wave, an idea. And it all began rotating. Finally, all dissolved into an energy. Everything he experienced as energy everywhere. So, So he was actually transcending the empirical.
Was that Nirvikalpa Samadhi when Swami Vivekananda?
Yeah, it can be just a glance or a peep into Nirvikalpa experience. Nirvikalpa Samadhi, Swamiji got much later. But Swamiji was not willing to accept even intellectually there is such a thing as this transcendental or trans-empirical experience. So Sri Ramakrishna could silence him by transmitting for a moment this experience. That's the idea behind it. And the fact that he was not Nirvikalpa Samadhi is clear because Swamiji immediately cried, "Oh, I have my father and mother, my home, and what will happen to them, And a person in Nirvikalpa Samadhi won't do that. Swamiji later got that experience through discipline. Sri Ramakrishna instructed him, Swami Vivekananda went through series of spiritual disciplines, and eventually he got that experience real. Nirvikalpa Samadhi. That's true. So there is one way of getting a glimpse of it, and that's one thing. And then that may not stay all the time. But when you yourself go through the stage by stage disciplines and research the experience, then it stays there. And it doesn't come to you as a shock. When Vivekananda had that Nirvikalpa Samadhi later, but that made him more serene, calm. But here Swamiji could not stand at that time. So he said, Ramakrishna, what are you doing to me? I have my mother in my home. So remember that. So that's the difference. So, okay, thank you. Yeah.
Maharaj, I want to ask about this chapter in Dr. Radhakrishna's History of Indian Philosophy. In the second volume, he has a remarkable chapter on Ramanuja.
Yeah.
And he's hugely appreciative.
Yeah.
And in conclusion, he says, the followers of Ramanuja move with as much Olympian assurance through the chambers of the divine mind as Milton through the halls of heaven. Yet Ramanuja had the greatness of a religious genius. He talks about how he unified all the scriptures into the indefinable unity of religious experience.
Yeah.
He tries his best to reconcile the demands of the religious feeling with the claims of logical thinking, with a deep earnestness and hard logic, and laboring to bridge the yawning gulf between the apparently conflicting claims of religion and philosophy. And I'm trying to parse out how we get to this point, because there's so much in the epistemology, in the analysis in this chapter, that it's almost as though Dr. Radhakrishnan has to circle back to something really elemental to explain the dialectic. And then he concludes, Ramanuja gives us the best type of monotheism conceivable.
Monotheism, that's true. Monotheism.
Things that with touches of immanentism.
Yeah. No, I mentioned this earlier. Yeah. When I try to compare Ramanuja with Spinoza, for example, the same intense devotion, the attribute, looking upon God as the supreme. That's true. But I'm getting the impression that it's almost a false equivalence to even compare Ramanuja. True. So, again, you have to remember, I have to mention this, I think I mentioned this earlier. Ramanuja's system was a natural response to an attempt to reduce Advaita into a dialectical, dry, metaphysical system, which it was not to begin with Shankara. This is an important thing to remember, So it often happened, and this happened partly because of one great writer who was a close follower of Shankaracharya. His name was Vajaspati Misra, who Bhamati Tika. So Bhamati was the beginning of a new school I mean, during a post-Shankarite school, there were three schools which evolved: Bhamati, Vivarana, and Vartika Prasthana. Bhamati Prasthana, Vartika Prasthana, and Vivarana Prasthana. Of these, Bhamati is an extremely dialectical book. Actually, very, very dialectical. And that was again Kalpataru, Parimala, like that it went on, I mean, one after another. They were not focusing only on this, or rather overemphasizing the idea of the idea of the world as a relative entity, as a vyavaharika only, as an empirical thing. And along with that, the idea that God as a creator of the world is also an incomplete understanding. And they wrongly charged it is a lower understanding. Shankaracharya never said lower, it is incomplete. See, it's a matter of our own evolution. An Advaitin reaching the highest Advaitic experience never denies, never rejects the monotheistic level. He says, there's an very, very important, I think I said this earlier.
Yes.
One of the greatest and most tragic things that happened during the post-Shankarite dialectics in Advaita was they could not really include Shankaracharya's own statement in the Gita Bhashya, where he equates the highest bhakti and the highest jnanam, the highest devotion and the highest Advaita as one. Maija aninya yogena bhakti avibijarini vivikta desha sevitum anabhirjana samsadi. You find in the Gita 13th chapter, 10th or 11th verse, what is the nature of the highest unwavering devotion is defined as non-different from jnanam. After giving a long description of avibijarini bhakti, unwavering devotion, then Shankaracharya says sacha jnanam, that also is the highest knowledge. Now, what happened in 16th century? It was Madhusudana Saraswati, who was perhaps a far greater devotee than Ramanuja, and a far greater devotee than any of the other non-Advaitic philosophers. Madhusudana Saraswati, he, for the first time, he incorporated Shankaracharya's bhakti ideal in his own commentary on Bhagavad Gita. It's called Gurartha Deepika. Gurartha Deepika is a supreme work in the Bhakti Yoga tradition. So, this Madhusudana was, in fact, at the very beginning itself, he says, I can never think of a more beautiful, a more sublime, or more elevating idea of God than the figure of the little child Krishna, who is playing a flute in the Vrindavan, sitting on the bank of the river. Little child, 5-year-old child. He's blue-eyed, is dark, and is playing innocently the beautiful flute. I can never think of a more sublime or more beautiful, more enchanting picture of the ultimate reality God other than anything higher than this figure. This is how he begins. Vamsi Vibhushita, he begins. So, and then he keeps this trend throughout his very, very important and very big book, Gurartha Deepika. And there he says he follows Shankaracharya's method in letter and spirit. The same Madhusudana wrote also a very famous dialectical book, Advaita Siddhi, which demolishes all the objections raised against Advaita. It's absolutely dialectical. But this man was every day doing puja, worship, and maybe chanting Shankaracharya's own stotras. And he was living in Benares. Madhusudana Saraswati lived in Benares. So, your question is very valid, very important. I can also tell you, if you are talking about about the great Indian scholars after Vivekananda. I can always place them only after Swami Vivekananda, because I don't equate them with Vivekananda. Because in Vivekananda you find a mystical touch of a man who experienced a lot of what he is writing about. But after Vivekananda, if you are looking for the most authentic writer on Indian philosophy, in my opinion, the first name I will give will be Professor Hiriyanna, who is a professor of Indian philosophy in the University of Mysore, Outlines of Indian Philosophy, Essays on Indian Philosophy, Quest After Perfection, and many such books. Radhakrishnan is also certainly a great philosopher, more well known. Perhaps if you are talking about authenticity, I will place Radhakrishnan just 1 inch below Professor Hiriyanna. Professor Hiriyanna is a prodigious scholar in Sanskrit, had training in Shastras. Those of my type who studied, morning getting up, memorizing everything, and then next day again Vada, Privada, and with other. Because Hiriyanna was a very, very traditional scholar who also wrote in magnificent English, but not in the same style, not in the same eloquent style. Radhakrishnan was certainly a far greater writer insofar as English language is concerned, because he was the one who is credited with the beginning. I think Eastern religion and Western thought is a compendium of his famous lectures in Oxford. So he was a far more well-known philosopher and writer, who is well-known to Bertrand Russell, and wrote, he was a man of international fame, and he was a great statesman. He was one of India's president. So, but he was a great man, no doubt. He also inspired some of our great Swamis of that generation. Hiriyanna is considered to be, even according to Radhakrishnan, it seems, in fact Radhakrishnan himself had written with great admiration about the authenticity of Hiriyanna. So I would say, of course there are others, T.M.B. Mahadevan and for others. There is another well-known writer, all listeners should be aware of them, there is Dr. Surendra Dasgupta, but he was trained as a Nayayiga and not as a Vedanta. He did not, perhaps I don't think, he may have received training in Indian logic, but not the same level of extensive, deep-rooted, traditional orthodox training which we can give Hiriyanna credit for. Hiriyanna is supremely authentic in a sense which we cannot, not in the sense, it's in a sense much more serious, much more intensely than others. So he was more of a historian of philosophy, Surendra Dasgupta. But Hiriyanna was a far greater Sanskrit scholar and scholar of Vedanta. You have to remember, there is a difference between authenticity and eloquence. Radhakrishnan was certainly authentic, but still not in the same degree in which you can talk about Professor Hiriyanna. There's a difference. There are others also in modern times still living, okay? So I am not excluding them from the list, but I'm talking about those who initiated writing in English language on Indian philosophy. One of the very rare scholars who combined prodigious scholarship in the traditional learning of Sanskrit and Vedantic scriptures, and also an ability to express that in English, somewhat old-fashioned English. Maybe it may be a little tedious to read Hiriyanna compared to Radhakrishnan. Okay, thank you.
How do you spell that, Swami? The Professor Hiriyanna, or?
Yeah, Hiriyanna. Hiriyanna. If you go write that much, the Google will do the rest.
Okay.
Yeah.
Here we are.
H-I.
Okay.
Okay. No, yeah.
Okay, and then my question is, did Ramanuja accept the concept of the Ishta or chosen ideal?
Yeah, he
or
did. He did.
He only, but did he accept like Shiva or Kali, or he only accepted the idea of the chosen ideal when it was, Krishna?
See, now you'll understand the difference in the sublime height of Advaita and non-Advaitic systems. Ramanuja himself was a great humanist, very compassionate and very broad-minded. But Ramanuja's system became slightly fanatical about his own idea of God, Sriman Narayana. So that could happen to all non-Advaitic systems. I think I mentioned this last time. One of Ramanuja's followers, I think if I'm right, maybe I'm right, Piriyanambi most probably, Ramanuja had to flee his own native kingdom because the local king was persecuting those who considered Vishnu as the highest god. So Vaishnavas, they call Vaishnavas. So the name of the king was Kulotunga, Krimi Kinkara. I mean, he may have had some cancer or something, was an ill person, and he was a bit of a fanatic, and he wanted everyone to accept Shiva as the highest god. And so he persecuted the followers of Ramanuja, and according to some accounts, one of his Ramanuja's followers, most probably Periyanambi, I am not sure, he was persecuted, and he was persecuted for refusing to reveal Ramanuja's whereabouts. Where Ramanuja was actually fleeing the country, he came to a place called Melkote, to the present Karnataka state, and he installed a temple. He became the teacher of the local king, and he has some miraculous powers. He treated the illness of one of the king's relatives, and then he got land and he built a temple there. And after the other king passed away, the one who persecuted Ramanuja and his followers, after he passed away, Ramanuja returned to Srirangam, with his hometown. I mean, he was born in Sriperumbudur, but he was living in Srirangam, and he went back there, and then he continued living there. So this is an important thing. So, and they wanted Ramanuja to proclaim that Shiva is greater than Vishnu and things like that. Now, such a thing would not happen in an Advaitic tradition. Remember, that's why I tell you, monotheism, even a very sublime concept of monotheism as Ramanuja has, it contains in it a possible, maybe a remote seed of fanaticism and dogmatism. Of course, the other man, the king, was a very fanatic, and he was persecuting Vaishnavas. So, maybe on the basis of what you call Vishishtadvaita, Ramanuja and his followers could not have deserted their own tradition. So they refused to admit. But then that happens to both Shaivites and also Vaishnavites. In Shankaracharya's system, in Advaita, no problem. So, Shankaracharya made a rule that every householder should worship in his home either or all together, either one or all to everyone, Adityam Bigam Vishnum Gananatham Maheshwaram Pancha Yajnavaro Nityam Grihastha Pancha Pujayi. Every householder should practice the worship of either sun god, maybe sun was a deity worshipped in those days, then mother, divine mother Kali, Rudra, Kali, Durga, Lakshmi, and any of these, Vishnu or Shiva, Maheshwara Shiva, Ganadhama and Ganapati. So anyone can practice. And he also started 5 denominations, Kumara. So Shankaracharya, as it said, his spiritual world it included a kindergarten and also a university. From kindergarten to university, kindergarten, primary school, lower primary school, higher primary school, city college, and also big university. All was there in Shankaracharya's system. So if you want to worship God, all right, go ahead. In Shankaracharya's followers included those who worshipped Shiva, Vishnu, Divine Mother, all of them. And also those who never cared for any god. You see, just imagine, the great Ramana Maharshi, he initially left his home and went to Tiruvannamalai. It is, he may have worshipped inside the Shiva temple, but later he went to his cave and never left that place. If Pavahari Baba in Kashi was living, he was only living in a cave when Guru Sri Ramakrishna went to meet him. Never went to Shiva Mandir also. So in Advaita, you can live in your own home, your own room, your own cell, and be a great spiritual person without going to any god, any temple, through meditation. Not by intellect, but through spiritual practice. You can, in Advaita. But Ramanuja system, for example, you have to go this responsibility to paranyasa, responsibility to the person. You have to utter the mantras and give responsibility to another person. More like confessions in the Catholic tradition, you find. So again, you had certain ways of putting sandal paste and all that. So it had a great bhakti ideal, but then the point is, it was very humanistic. Ramanuja was a great humanist. He was a very compassionate person. So all those great things were there. But any kind of monotheism may contain in it, not necessarily, but could happen, it could happen, the seed of little bit of fanaticism. That's all. Okay, so we'll meet next Sunday. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Tat Sat Sri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.